uniforms in the swamp on that field. All sorts of memories are going to go through my mind of days gone by when this matchup really mattered on the national scene and certainly within the SEC Eastern Division. But for Tennessee right now, it's about building blocks and it's about trying to make some hay and get some respect and some fight back in the program. We got Charlie Burse on the line from Orange and White Report. Join him and the rest of the staff right there covering Tennessee football. Charlie, how you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on, Mark.
Absolutely. Love having you on to talk some VOLS, and it's an intriguing situation. I know it's not the situation you would like, but to have this much of a storied program that has recruited well under Butch Jones and now Jeremy Pruitt, but hasn't been able to put the pieces together. And that mysterious – we'll start from week one. Georgia State, that wasn't necessarily a fluke of a bunch of tipped passes and missed field goals. And, you know, it was a 2-score game with like 5 minutes left in the game. Tennessee wasn't able to run the ball and have obviously not played well. And then the fluke the next week when they had the game in hand against BYU. So it's been a rough go for a team that when we looked at the schedule preseason thought, okay, it's going to be rough in the SEC, but they should go 4-0 out of conference, get themselves into bowl play.
Yeah, this season has been something, that's for sure. So far, it's hard to almost even wrap my head around exactly what this team might be, because I think week one, totally unprepared, just absolutely blew it. I'm not sure even how necessarily to diagnose what happened. It's so perplexing, just in every way. They got their butt kicked by an awful team, a team that went the next week and lost by double digits to Furman. I mean, Georgia State's not good. And then Tennessee comes back the next week, and I think the game against BYU is a little more indicative of how good they might actually be. Their head was much more in the game. They were much more motivated, much more present, and ready to go for that game, which obviously, it really makes me think that with the Georgia State game, they just thought that they were going to come in, roll their helmets on the field and win. But ultimately, that's extremely concerning, even though they looked better the next week. Why were they allowed to ever feel like that if that was the case? If it really was just, we thought we were going to come in and trounce Georgia State. And make no mistake, Tennessee should be able to feel that way and still beat Georgia State. I mean, that's how bad Georgia State is. It's the worst team in the Sun Belt last year, one of the worst teams in FBS football. They're garbage. And so it's still so insane to me that happened. But going back to BYU, they looked better. Like I said, I think that's a little more indicative of who this team really is. At the end of the day, they're not this team that's going to lose to FCS opponents. But it's still hard to say exactly who they are. I don't think they know who they are. I think they have a quarterback that is not confident in himself, and he doesn't believe in himself to make throws and make plays. It seems like he goes out and he kind of says things that would make you maybe believe he does, but then when he actually gets on the field, it doesn't look like it at all. Have talented receivers, talented running backs who play well, but they're behind and beside an offensive line that is weak at best. And then the defense, I mean, that should be Jeremy Pruitt's bread and butter. And they were good against BYU, actually. Turns out BYU's quarterback's pretty good. They went the next week, beat USC. People are calling him the Mormon Manziel. And then, they did a good job containing him until, of course, the second to last play of the game. And I don't know. There's just so many questions with this team, and I think it's going to be really telling in terms of what happens tomorrow. The main thing that I'm looking for, in no way do I expect Tennessee to win. Do I think they could? Yes. Florida plays awful. Tennessee has its best game of the season, sure. What I'm looking for is for Tennessee not to roll over and die, not to lose by 30 like it did last year. And to me, that would show something.
Yeah, I think if we look at the very surface numbers, just meaning wins and losses, Florida's beaten two pretty good teams. They're 3-0. They're ranked in the top 10. Tennessee lost to Georgia State. How in the world did that happen? They're 1-2. They basically don't even have a win that you can really count. So the game shouldn't be close, whatever. I think if you really look at the talent levels of the rosters, yes, Florida's better. They're at home. Yes, they have a more cohesive unit playing both offensively and defensively. They've proven more. They've played well over the last year plus 3 games now. So, yeah, they're a decided favorite. I would not be shocked if Tennessee won this game. A lot of these players were on the field to beat Auburn and to beat Kentucky last year. That's where I made a distinction when somebody threw me Willie Taggart and Jeremy Pruitt this week. I said, it's been a complete debacle at Florida State since Willie Taggart took over, and they've not been prepared for anything. At least Jeremy Pruitt, at least that team showed us 2 glimpses in those 2 games. They played well in some others, and certainly the stretch run was disappointing because they should have gotten to a bowl game, but they showed us against 2 very good opponents that they could play well.
They did, and I'm looking for that play again this year. That was probably the craziest thing, is that coming out of the gate, the team looked like they had regressed. And honestly, they kind of looked that way against Vanderbilt. You had a bowl game on the line, something that right now this program could really take pride in, is making a bowl game, winning 6 games, making it back to a bowl game, winning that bowl game, having a winning season at 7-6. Like, that would have been massive for this program. And they came out, looked like they really had no pride at Vanderbilt. And then they came out against Georgia State a year later, and they looked the same. They looked like they hadn't taken any steps forward. Jarrett Garantano looked like he had taken 5 steps back. And with a new offensive coordinator, and you got to wonder, do all of the offseason staff changes, you had T. Martin coming in, you had a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, all these staff changes, is that negatively affecting the team? You also have to wonder, and this has been a prevailing narrative, if you've paid attention to Tennessee media at all, that it seemed like there is a whole set of players that are really bought in to Jeremy Pruitt and what Jeremy Pruitt is teaching and his philosophy as a coach. And then there's a whole set of players, mostly guys, if not completely guys, who came from the Butch era at Tennessee, who are not bought in, who are kind of have like I don't want to say an attitude that they quit, but just an attitude that is not the passion that this team needs right now. I mean, this team needs guys who will not quit. Absolutely relentless guys. Guys like Eric Gray, Henry Toto, both, huge recruits that Jeremy Pruitt brought in, and they both played a ton, and they both looked awesome. I don't think that's coincidence at all. And they really bought in, and they're buying what Jeremy Pruitt is selling. And, like I said, there's a whole set of guys that it appears are not doing that. And it might be creating some real locker room division. It might take another year, another 2 years before that actually gets itself sorted out. And then, when you have that conversation, you got to say, does Jeremy Pruitt get another 2 years if this stuff continues? So I think this game on Saturday is absolutely massive in terms of Jeremy Pruitt's legacy. If he could win it, I think positively. And if he loses it, I think you're staring 1-6 in the face. And that could be absolutely disastrous because Lord knows if you're getting crushed by mid-season like that, you win 1 out of your first 6 games, you got to think down the stretch they're not going to get much better. And so, this game could really be a turning point either way, good or bad.
So what you bring up there is pretty fascinating in regards to, and it's all speculation, but it's logical speculation about what could be going on between the ears of these players. Yeah. And you've got different divisions of players, and you have generally 2 that are easy to pick out. The guys recruited and signed by Butch Jones, the guys recruited and signed by Jeremy Pruitt. Then you probably have different mentalities there in regards to whether a guy is a surefire NFL player or whether he's going to fight for his life, regardless of, I could care less about Jeremy Pruitt. I could care less about this program, but I'm a junior or senior, and I got a shot to get to the NFL. So I'm going to bust my tail to at least show that and do it for selfish reasons, and I have no issues with that. These guys lay their health on the line and so forth, whatever gets the job done. If they're going to play their minds out because that's their incentive, great. But you mentioned a couple players there where it's fascinating in terms of thinking if Jeremy Pruitt can continue to sell them that, hey, it's going to get better and you're only a freshman or you're only a sophomore and we can turn this around and your last 2 or 3 years are going to be really good. We're going to have to fight through some hard times. Just give it to me now.
Yeah. And I definitely am not going to say that I'm out on Jeremy Pruitt. I haven't seen major coaching malpractice. In fact, I've seen some spots where Jeremy Pruitt has really looked like he's outcoached some guys. I think the Auburn game last year is the prime example of that. And the Kentucky game also, he outcoached Mark Stoops and Gus Malaton. So there's been some encouraging markers. The big leap that the team took from laying an egg against Georgia State to the next game against BYU, where they kind of seemed like they had a fire lit under them from one game to the next. That's as awful as that Georgia State game was. You do have to give them a little bit of credit that Pruitt sort of flipped whatever switch over the course of 6 days, even though it ended up being a losing effort against BYU. But there are encouraging markers, like I've said, and I think if Pruitt gets a really good set of guys in here, keeps getting these 4-star guys, and you can be perennially number 2, number 3 in the East to Florida or Georgia or whoever takes that top spot, and you can be in that, that revolving set of teams. You gotta be better. Gotta be better than South Carolina. Gotta be better than Kentucky. Gotta be better than Missouri. That's a baseline at Tennessee. Butch Jones pulled that off somehow. I don't know how. I think Josh Dobbs did most of the work, but yeah, Butch Jones found a way. So I think that Jeremy Pruitt could get there if he keeps filling these spots in the roster with these good players. Like I mentioned, Henry Toto, Eric Gray, guys like that. And it's hard for me. I don't want to make any guarantees because obviously this team has looked so bad at points. But I think eventually, given enough time to recruit and kind of shuffle out some of these dudes that are a little bit poisonous to the program, I think things will turn around in some sense. At the very least, they'll get back to a bowl game. But like I mentioned, this game this week, I think, is huge. At a baseline, putting up a performance that you can hang your hat on and say, oh, well, we had the lead in the third quarter. Oh, well, we were close in the fourth quarter. Even if you lose, having benchmarks like that, like I said, that you can hang your hat on and build on is going to be massive, even if Tennessee doesn't go in and pull a miracle in Gainesville.
So, of course, part of Garantano's hit to his confidence may have to do with being on his back and running for his life in the offensive line. Because, man, I look at these playmakers at running back and wide receiver. You're maybe not at the top of the SEC, but you're certainly an SEC team, a good SEC team at running back and wide receiver. No question about that. And Garantano showed us enough last year that he's at least going to make the throws he should make and going to protect the ball. He only had 3 picks. And unfortunately, the offensive line, I got to think, I'm not a coach, is the most difficult unit to improve during the season, I would think. I would think that's more of an off-season project. It's the unit that requires the most orchestration and cohesion and moving guys around, and they all have to work together unlike any other unit on the field. So that's the unfortunate thing because, again, I think this game could be pulled out.
Yeah, I do too, and it would take an extraordinary performance from Jarrett Garantano, a performance that I would say we haven't seen from him ever. His best game as a Tennessee Volunteer was against Auburn last year. He really made some throws. Personally, I didn't think he could make in that game. But he looked better this past week against UTC. That's not saying much. UTC, of course, is an FCS team. It's not like they're at all any kind of world beater. But he did look better. Maybe he got a little bit of his confidence back. But I think just from his time playing behind these absolutely wretched offensive lines that he has, he's just been getting crushed his entire career from 2 years ago till now. I mean, he hasn't had room to breathe back there behind the line. He's just, guys are in his grill all game long, every single game that he plays, and that has to wear on your psyche. I don't see how it couldn't. And so I think it's made him scared to sit back there, but then at the same time, I think it hasn't given him a chance to truly develop his passing skills in a game situation because he hasn't had that time. I think he's a one read guy, and he's pigeonholed himself into that because he doesn't have much more time than than being able to do one read and getting the ball out. And so I think it's been this whole amalgamation of things, these problems that Tennessee has had on the offensive line, that's really contributed to him just being screwed up in whatever way that it is. Because you're exactly right. Tennessee with Ty Chandler, Eric Gray, Juwan Jennings, this set of receivers and running backs that Tennessee has, that's absolutely competitive at an SEC level. Make no mistake about that. They're 4 and 5 star guys who, especially a guy like Juwan Jennings. I mean, that dude, you throw the ball around him, he's going to go up and get it. He's just a playmaker. Tennessee should be able to have a serviceable offense, especially. I mean, Chaney is certainly, he gets knocked for not being the most creative offensive coordinator in America, but he's put together some magnificent offenses in his time, including a couple at Tennessee when he was with Derek Dooley back in 2011. And that guy can coach, and it's hard for me to believe that the things that he is doing are causing this offense to be that bad. And so I have to look, where else do you look at that point than to the players? And I think Jarek Arantano, I almost don't fault him. He's a head case, in my opinion, when I look at it. Jarek Arantano doesn't believe in Jarek Arantano, and it's really, really negatively affecting the offense as a whole.
All right. Not exactly vintage Tennessee and Florida when they line up at the Swamp on Saturday. The Vols have lost 13-14 in the series, 7 straight in the Swamp. I don't need to remind Charlie of that, but
I know.
Sorry about that, Charlie. This is not exactly Werfel, Manning, T. Martin, those guys out there, Heath Schuler and the like. But SEC players, many of them will play in the NFL. Many of them will play in the NFL. So it's always worth checking out. Tennessee and Florida, and the survival of the program, as Charlie points it out, might be at a crossroads right here for the Vols. And, of course, Florida has bigger fish to fry in regards to their aspirations for the here and now. Charlie, we appreciate you stopping by. It's a great breakdown on Tennessee football. You always unravel a lot of things that make us think. So appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do it. Glad to be. I've kind of been sitting out of media recently. I'm not covering the team like I used to, so it's fun to be back doing this. I really appreciate it, Mark.
Absolutely. Thanks, Charlie.